Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Former NFL wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson on FS1 Speak, kind of connecting some dots regarding Shedeur Sanders.
Typically, you hear whispers coming out of training camp, so to speak, about how bad a guy is. Mm-hmm. Oh, man, I can't believe they thought he was the first rounder. Boo, boo, boo. They don't ever attach names to it. It's usually a source, or usually we heard from a player that this person. We ain't heard nothing like that about Shedeur. He's struggling. He's having. There you go, Joy. You're not hearing any of that. So that tells me he's doing everything that they've asked him to do and everything to put himself in a position to eventually be the starting quarterback. And Pittsburgh and Cleveland says right now they're leaning toward keeping 4 quarterbacks on the active roster.
That is very true. You hear those whispers, but you don't hear them about fifth-round picks. Having said that, you've heard Shedeur Sanders has made progress. So we'll see. Again, none of it matters till you get pads on. Let's see him in pads. And if we see him in pads and he's still doing great, might have found a quarterback. Pat McAfee, Peter Schrager from the Pat McAfee Show, ESPN, what they've heard about Shedeur Sanders.
I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that game, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm reading.
He can sling it.
I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep. You talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike Napier. Once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
I've heard he's been outstanding in the building, and I don't know. There was never no one thought he was this malcontent or like a bag. It wasn't.
That was the word.
That was kind of what was being said. That was kind of what was being said.
No. The pre-draft process was so unorthodox that he didn't go through it all like everyone else did. And I think there's a lot that we can look back on this thing, especially if he becomes a star in this league and say, you could point fingers in a million ways. Not having a pure agent, not having, the workouts that everyone else did, going to these teams, not necessarily being as willing to throw the ball when asked at the All-Star games. Like that kind of stuff I think might have stung him and might have turned teams off. But at no point did anyone say he's a bad kid or that he wasn't going to get along with veterans and come. I mean, this is a guy who has been training to be a professional football player since the day he was born and is ready for this moment.
I think you continue to watch the way the veterans interact with him in mic'd up situations because there appears to already be a little bit of a respect from the veterans. When they're joking around with him and doing those kind of things, it's a pretty good indication they think the kid can play. So we'll see. Again, it all changes when you put pads on. If it continues along those lines, you might have found something. Former NFL lineman Chris Long, talking about the Browns quarterback situation.
What do you think is going to happen in Cleveland before I let you go with the quarterbacks, right?
I would imagine Joe Flacco starts to start the season. Now, a lot of people who probably talk on this show and other shows during the summer, they make a lot of phone calls. I don't know what the hell's going on.
I'm with you. I think Flacco's going to start week 1. I think it's the Joes, Flacco v. Burrow. I think that's what's going to happen at the end of the day.
I think that's what's going to happen, and I think you buy yourself as much time to see who looks like a pro in practice and who's operating that way, and then you give the rookies different shots to succeed during the year. It does feel like they've kind of finally come to grips with the fact that, they got to start over a little bit. Good on them. Only 3 years late, but, here we are.
Yes, that was definitely a Deshaun Watson dig. Plenty of Browns coverage ahead. Scott Petrak, Fred Greetham will be along in a few minutes to talk Browns. The Guardians beginning a 3-game series against the Giants in San Francisco. Slate's Coney, Robbie Ray, the starting pitchers. It's also the Giants' debut for Rafael Devers, acquired from the Red Sox. Third inning, 1-1. Devers hits one out into right center. No one will catch it. Willie Adames scores to give the Giants a 2-1 lead. Fourth inning, Carlos Santana at the plate for the Guardians. David Fry on at second. Santana, a sharp single to center field. David Fry will score to tie the game up at 2. Sixth inning, Gabriel Arias at the plate, and he takes one the other way. And take a look at this. Just keeps going and going. A solo home run about 415 feet the opposite way. Eighth inning, runners at first and second. Wilmer Flores at the plate hits a line drive to left. Stephen Kwan grabs it and comes up throwing and shows off his arm, doubles up the runner off of second base. Giants load the bases in the ninth, but Emmanuel Clase gets the strikeout to end the game. 3-2, the Guardians get a much-needed win. Stephen Vogt talked about Slade Ciccone, went 5 innings and gave up just 2 earned runs.
I thought Slade was pretty good. A little bit of command issues early, kind of yanking the ball going across his body, but he didn't have his best stuff tonight, but he battled, and really the slider was pretty good tonight. Curveball was hit or miss, and the fastball velo was fluctuating quite a bit, and that's just a product of when your delivery's a little bit off. But for him to give us 5 there and keep us in the game, I thought did your job and give it to the bullpen.
For fans that sit at home maybe and look at pitch counts, I think he's stayed under 85 last 2. Is that more of what you're reading, what you're seeing more than anything else?
Yeah, again, Slade has the ability to throw more pitches. When it was tied, we were third time through the order, we were getting to the middle, and I thought that was a perfect spot for Festa to come in and bridge it, and the bullpen was phenomenal. But Slade threw well. He's helping us. He's helping us win games, and he's just going to keep getting better.
Again, Ciccone Young, just 25 years old, had 6 strikeouts, another good start. Game 2 of the series tonight, Logan Allen will face Justin Verlander on the mound. Guardians, a half game behind the Mariners for the final AL wildcard spot at the start of the day. We're talking Browns. Scott Petrak from the Chronicle-Telegram. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Plenty of talk this week about the Browns potentially keeping 4 quarterbacks on their roster. Former NFL wide receiver James Jones asked if he agrees with that idea.
It's crazy that they saying this before training camp and before Shador even got an opportunity to play a game. That means he has checked every single box that they need to check. Because third-round pick, you're not going to get cut.
Of course
You're
not.
going to make the football team unless you just bad. And even if you bad, you're probably going to be on practice squad. So for them to come out right now before they have played a preseason game to say we are going to keep 4 quarterbacks, number one, that lets me know it's a wide-open competition.
Come on now.
Number 2, we want to keep these veterans out here. Let them maybe try it out there first. But we're going to keep these young boys because they showed us we could play. And for Shador to be a 5th rounder and to get out there in OTAs and mini camps and check all the boxes, that is why they talking like this. I absolutely love the idea because I think that all these dudes is going to get an opportunity to play and let the best man win the job. But I love it because you ain't got one right now, and you don't know what the rookies are going to be.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Scott, I don't mind the idea at all. In the 4 quarterbacks, you're trying to find competent quarterback play, and 4 gives you more of a chance than 3 or 2.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I don't hate the idea just because it's quarterback. And it's so important, and we don't know if one of these 4 guys is going to work out. Now, I think it's still unlikely that they keep 4. Roster spots are pretty precious. And, you can say, oh, we'll only keep 3 tight ends. What if one gets hurt? Or, whatever other position you want to kind of rob Peter to pay Paul, it's dangerous. But if you're going to make an exception, quarterback is the position to make the exception. Where I'll disagree a little bit with James Jones is I always thought Sanders and Gabriel were going to be on the 53-man roster. To me, it's how do they handle the 2 veterans, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett? Do they try to move one? Is there any market for either one? Or do they say, the rookies aren't ready, so let's keep both veterans? I think that's a bigger variable. I think both rookies are on the 53.
There's a popular narrative nationally that the Browns have to find out what they have in these 2 quarterbacks. And feel free to disagree with me. The way I come at this is those 2 guys have to show, one of them has to show you, or both of them have to show you that they are viable NFL quarterbacks, I think you kind of are going through the working assumption one of those first 2-round picks next year is going to be a quarterback if there's one that's sitting there that you like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I completely get what you're saying, David. And you're not wrong. I do understand the thought of, hey, before you spend a top 10 pick or maybe package 2 top 10 picks to move up to get a quarterback in 2026, are you better off as an organization knowing if Dylan Gabriel might be the guy or Shedeur Sanders might be the guy? I would say in a vacuum, yes. Now, the danger is you see a guy play for 3 weeks in December and you make a sweeping conclusion. And then you don't draft a guy and he's not the guy, and all of a sudden it's square zero again. So I think smart money would be on the Browns taking a quarterback in the first round in 2026. And I certainly don't think you play the rookies just to play them. Like if you're winning games this year, then it doesn't make sense to switch to a rookie. If it's a lost cause, then sure, maybe you play them just to play them, see what they got, get some experience. But I don't think it's necessary. And you have to also remember, you're seeing these guys throughout the offseason, throughout training camp, in practice. The Browns will have a pretty good sense. Not a full picture, but they'll have a sense if they think either guy has a chance to eventually become a starter.
Yeah, without question. And then the question becomes, is he an average starter? Is he, in that 20 range? And is that good enough? I mean, that's one of the reasons you moved on from Baker Mayfield. You didn't think he was elite enough. So if there's a guy in the draft that you think is an elite quarterback, give me 3 good quarterbacks as opposed to what we've had the past several years.
No, that's a great point. And I think Sanders and Gabriel would have to go a long way to show the Browns, or to convince the Browns that they are the long-term top 10 quarterback in the league. Right? I mean, you draft the guy in the 3rd round, the 5th round. That's just not the assumption. It's not even the thought process. So I think you're right. I think things can change, obviously, but it feels like the reality is, unless Kenny Pickett proves to be the guy, which, again, is, I would think, a long shot. What could Sanders or Gabriel do to say don't draft Arch Manning or Nussmeier? It would take a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi asked where this quarterback competition ranks in terms of what he has covered with the Browns.
You've seen some training camp circuses. You were here for Tim Couch. You were here for Johnny Manziel. You were here for Baker Mayfield's rookie year and Brady Quinn's rookie year. What is going to be unique or different about Shedeur in training camp and preseason games?
Well, he's got such incredible fan support that I think if he isn't given any opportunities, the Browns are going to hear about that from their fans. I think at training, when fans attend training camp, it'll be obvious he's the most popular guy on the team.
Jeez.
I can feel that.
The
already.
4th string quarterback is the most popular guy on the team.
Tony, I feel like you stopped short of saying the fans are going to riot.
No, but I think if they comport themselves like they do online, they may. Because I think there's a natural curiosity, too, even from unbiased fans of the Browns. Like, what is so special? Why does everyone love this guy so much?
It's interesting, Scott. I wanted to argue that he would be the most popular guy. I don't know if I can argue that. There's a segment of the fan base that's upset at Myles Garrett because of the offseason where he wanted out. Nick Chubb isn't here. There's that guy that the fans love. I guess it's kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, my head went to those 2 guys too, David. Are the fans really still upset at Myles? I know some probably are. So Myles was my first thought. Obviously, would have been Nick Chubb if he were still here. Joe Flacco's pretty popular.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there's a little generation gap there. The older fans still have a soft spot for Joe, and the younger fans really like Shedeur. I could see that playing out. But he's certainly one of the most popular guys. Tony's 100% right that you feel that online. Like, it was immediate after the Browns drafted him. He started showing up. You feel that popularity when you tweet about him, when you write about him. So he's not wrong. Now, Johnny Manziel was really popular. I mean, he was a huge name. He won the Heisman. Same with Baker. The difference is that Shadir's a 5th-round pick. And those guys are first-rounders. Baker's a number 1 overall pick. So there's an expectation you're going to see those guys sooner rather than later. And that's not the expectation, or at least I don't think it should be the expectation with Shadir Sanders.
So you had some camp takeaways. Take us through the 5 takeaways from minicamp that you had.
Yeah, a lot of them were about the quarterbacks, but it was, I think Kenny Pickett, and we've talked about this, I think Kenny Pickett entered the competition as the favorite for the Browns. Like, if in a perfect world, he would win the job because he's still young, first-round pick, has played in the league. It's just kind of the perfect combination. So I think the Browns would love him to, or would prefer him to win the job. I think in the OTAs and minicamp, Joe Flacco looked like the guy that should be your starting quarterback week 1. Now there's a lot of time left, but for lack of a better term, I think Joe Flacco either narrowed the gap or if he was already in the lead, extended it. And I don't know who I would pick right now to be the favorite to start week 1. I think it'd be really close between Pickett and Flacco. I personally think Flacco gives you the best chance to win week 1, which should carry the most weight. I thought Sanders was really good. And, you read other people in the media, and I respect all their opinions. And it's interesting to see the different takes because we're all watching the same thing, but people have different opinions. I thought Shadir was good from the first time I saw him in rookie minicamp. Now, that doesn't mean he hasn't gotten better because I think he has. But I think if you just look at it, the 7 practices I got to watch Shadir Sanders, I thought he threw the ball the best of all the quarterbacks. Doesn't mean he's got the strongest arm, but I saw a lot of completions. He worked a lot in the red zone with skews, like the touchdown numbers, but I saw touchdowns. I saw throwing on time. The ball placement's really high level. Isn't afraid to push the ball down the field. And then Gabriel, I thought struggled early, and then I thought threw the ball the best the last 2 practices of minicamp. You saw some deeper throws. You saw some deeper in routes where he completed passes, which I hadn't seen in the earlier practices with Gabriel. And a couple of Buckeyes to keep an eye on, non-quarterbacks. DeJuan Jones needs to be really good at left tackle and looks good, has lost weight, is in good shape. They're counting on him. They're also counting on fellow Buckeye, or former Buckeye, Ronnie Hickman at safety. A lot of turnover at that position. They need him to play free safety and create some turnovers. And it's year 3 for the undrafted rookie, or, the undrafted free agent when he came out. And they're counting on him. And then the 5th one was, I still have big questions at receiver. If Deontay Johnson and Ced Tillman are who the Browns hope they can be, then yeah, they're fine. But if one of those, and let alone both of those guys, aren't who the Browns want them to be, then it's Jerry Jeudy and cross your fingers.
So here we heard that Sampson's working in the slot with Chad O'Shea. You have Fannin. Does that? I mean, I'm with you. The receiving core is thin. Yeah. Do those 2 guys potentially make it so you don't have to play 3 wide receivers? Sometimes you only play Jerry Jeudy if you're doing 2 running backs, 2 tight ends.
Yeah, I think it lessens the importance. I just don't love that. I get it. And when you're talking roster construction, sometimes you need to, we talk about borrowing, a spot. Sometimes you need the tight end room and the running back room to lift your receivers. And that certainly feels like what's going to need to happen here. And I get that the Browns are going to run the ball more than they did last year. And they're going to go back to more 2 and 3 tight ends. I get it, which lowers to some degree the importance of the wideout position. But, you got to go 3 wides at some point. So, however they can run the ball great this year, you're going to have 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 10. And the easiest way to convert that is by going with 3 wides. Now, if Dylan Sampson turns in to be your slot guy, okay, then that helps you a lot there. But we're also talking about a rookie who's 5'8", coming out of Tennessee. So I just don't. I understand that thinking, and I think there's something to it. I don't love it. I still think you need better talent and depth at the wideout spot.
Oh, I cannot argue with you one bit about that. Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking offense. A little bit about the line coming up. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Chronicle Telegram as well as BrownZone.com. Kevin Stefanski in a team meeting early, setting expectations for this year.
This is, as you get in the weight room, you'll see this across the back wall. Hardened toughness. Hardened toughness. If you've been around the game of football, hardship, strain, exposure, that's what this is, right? There's hardship in football. We know that. There's strain. We don't want the weight room part of what we do. We don't want it to be easy. You will not get callous if it's easy. It won't happen. Okay? So we're callousing up our bodies. You better believe you're callousing up your minds, your mentality. That's what we're going to be about. Our toughness is earned. There's no toughness that's given around here. Okay? Everything that's going to be in our building is going to come from a mentality of hard work. Not just work, not just showing up and punching in. It's going to be hard. Okay? Because why? It's going to callous us up. All right, that's who we are, fellas. Day number 1, 2025 Cleveland Browns. Lay this foundation of who we want to be starting right now, starting today.
So, Scott, the intensity of minicamp was ramped up from a year ago. Do you expect changes to training camp?
Oh, without a doubt. I think you'll follow the pattern, and I think it will be even more obvious and more of a contrast when you get the pads on. You know, and it's not like Kevin Stefanski's ever run a really difficult training camp, and that's a organizational philosophy. You want to get as many guys healthy to week 1 as you can. It's a long season. It's 18 weeks, 17 games. I understand that. Last year felt a little different, whether that was coming off the playoffs, whether it was you had your starting quarterback, Deshaun Watson, coming off the injury, whatever it was, it didn't feel even as difficult as the previous Stefanski camps. So I have no doubt it's going to be ratcheted up. When you have a commitment to the run game like they're going to have, at least that they profess to have, and I believe they will, you have to practice running the ball. And it's got to be in pads. And it's your linemen pulling against other linemen. That's how you do it. That's how you train your rookie running backs to find the fits in the holes. So I think we're going to see a more physical camp. Now, maybe it's physical, but still shorter practices. Like, I could see Stefanski trying to find that happy medium, but I have no doubt it's going to look different than last year.
Yeah, and we had talked about this when they were 3-14 last year. Whatever you did, you can't do that again because you had so many. Last couple of years, had so many injuries and slow starts that kills an NFL season.
No, you're exactly right. And I think Stefanski is smart enough and flexible enough to make those changes. You know, organizationally, they changed their their strength and conditioning staff, their athletic training staff. They got rid of their longtime head athletic trainer. So I think that's probably response to the injuries and the way they went into seasons. You talk about being ready week 1. I mean, gosh, look at that schedule. You better be ready week 1. If you're not, you're staring 0-6 in the face, and then who knows what happens. So I think that's a great point, David. I think it's another reason why the intensity in July and August must be heightened, because you got to be ready for that first game against the Bengals, because the Bengals have had the same issue starting the season, and you know they are putting a lot of eggs into that week 1 basket as well.
So I know you wrote an article about Mike Bloomgren. He's from the Bill Callahan coaching tree. Take us through that article and just what you had with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ties into the toughness discussion. And, Joe Bitonio has mentioned toughness, and he pointed to Bloomgren, and, he called him, I don't know what you're allowed to say on the show, so I'll say he called him a jerk and said you have to be a jerk to be a good O-line coach. And it just brings you right back to Bill Callahan because, Bill Callahan rubs some guys the wrong way. He's meticulous, and he harps on you, and he those guys worked so hard, those offensive linemen, when Callahan was here. And a guy like Wyatt Teller, I think I know he initially resisted it and then kind of grew to appreciate it. And so then you go to Mike Bloomgren. He's former head coach. He's been in the league. And when he was in the league, when he broke in the league in 2007 to the Jets, Bill Callahan was one of his bosses. So he learned under Callahan. We know they're going to go back to the run. We know they're going back to the wide scheme. And Bloomgren has that experience under Callahan. So it should be kind of a smooth transition back to what the Browns did early under Kevin Stefanski. And I know the linemen are really excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, we heard from a couple of them, and they want to get back to running the ball, and they want to get back to Kevin Stefanski. How important is that? I mean, those are the guys, NFL games are won in the trenches. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
It's huge. And, there's so many things to take away from that 3-14 season. But to me, it might be the clearest memory I have of, the day after locker cleanout. And it was the linemen really stressing that they need to get back to running the ball. They need to get back to the wide zone. I think Joe Bitonio said that he might have pulled 3 times all season. And that it was either he or Wyatt Teller, but it was Bitonio telling the story. And he goes, that's what we used to do all the time. And that's what we're the best at. So, we know why they got away from it. It was they were going to go spread. It was Deshaun Watson, a quarterback, try to maximize his skill set. You had the coordinator switch with Ken Dorsey. And obviously it didn't work. And the linemen thought that was a significant reason why it didn't work and were vocal about needing to go back to it. And I think it was Bitonio, Teller, and Jack Conklin all had the same opinion.
You also wrote an article about the 2 rookie running backs. Take us through that and kind of how that – if they're going to be successful, they got to run the football.
Yeah, and it starts with Quinshon Judkins. And I do think we're probably overlooking Jerome Ford a bit. He started a bunch of games for this team in the last couple of years when Nick Chubb was hurt. And while I don't think he's a true number 1 in this league, he belongs in this league and he can have some success. But I expect Quinshon Judkins to be the week 1 guy. They drafted him at 36. So, it's hard to judge a running back in minicamp. And Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, said, hey, these guys are in pajamas. But you can see the physical stature of Quinshon Judkins. 6 foot, 221 pounds. Then you add that to really good ability to cut. And that shows up in minicamp. Now, we know they're not in pads. We know nobody's tackling. But you can see a guy jump cut. And you can see a guy go through the footwork drills. And he looks good for a guy 6 foot, 221. So you have him. I expect him to be the workhorse. And what I didn't know was how they would balance he and Dylan Sampson. Because I like Sampson a lot. I know he's shorter. I mentioned 5'8", 200 pounds. But I thought, okay, I thought Sampson, maybe he could be a kind of your number 1 back too if the Browns hadn't gotten Judkins. And Deuce Staley said they're different. And that's when he pointed out that Sampson's working a lot in the slot. And he's meeting with the receivers because they're using him out there. So I think it'll be Judkins and Jerome Ford and then Sampson in the slot, maybe Sampson in the backfield on 3rd down. But I think you're going to get a lot of Quinshon Judkins.
Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we flip sides of the ball. Talk a little bit about the defense. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Scott, Browns used their first 2 picks on the defensive side of the ball in spite of how much they needed offensively. They drafted Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. What do you think they were telling us kind of about what they thought about the defense?
Yeah, I think you can read into it that they're going to try to win games, running the ball and playing really good defense and get back to what part of what they looked like in 2023 when they had that number 1 defense in yardage. I think the Schlesinger pick is obviously tied into JOK's injury and the fact that he's going to miss all of 2025. I think Mason Graham, yes, they need to get better on that D-line. They need to give Myles Garrett some more help. Graham was the best guy there. I think it also speaks to maybe a lack of top-end offensive talent in this draft. So I think it's a combination of things. But to me, the biggest takeaway is they're going to try to go back to winning games with defense and ball control, and they needed to get a couple other playmakers on that side of the ball, and they believe Graham and Schlesinger can be that.
Yeah, I think those two guys are physical. I think they want to get more physical, particularly kind of in the middle of the field. That the D tackles were okay, but now you've given. Normally, Jim Schwartz has a stud defensive tackle. Now he might have one.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the hope. And, he talked about how lines always slide toward Myles Garrett. And that leaves the opposite D tackle one-on-one with a guard. And you're drafting a guy number 5, you expect him to beat that guard. Now, I don't know if it'll always be Graham. Sometimes it could be Mike Hall Jr. if he's healthy, or, they signed veteran Malik Collins as well. But whoever that other defensive end or defensive tackle is, and maybe it's even Alex Wright on third down, that guy has to win. He's got to beat the guard one-on-one, and they think Graham can do that. And you're right about the physicality of Schlesinger. I think he's a similar type player as JOK, the ability to cover, playmaker, a lot of tackles. But he's thicker than JOK. He's got really thick legs, strong legs. I think he will bring a presence in that linebacker position.
You wrote an article about Graham and the defensive coaches. Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I got into it with the kind of funny anecdote of Jacques Césaire talking about how he vomited at that rookie minicamp, his first rookie minicamp practice. And he goes, Jacques, that got all the attention, but the key was that he finished practice. And he said, the one big takeaway is throughout the Browns, whether it's Andrew Berry or, Jim Schwartz or Jacques Césaire or Kevin Stefanski, they talk about watching Graham in the Michigan defense, where he was asked to take on double teams, more of a read and react, and yet he still found ways to penetrate and to make plays in the backfield, even though that's not really what he was being asked to do initially. And Césaire said it's not just like he was 1 yard in the backfield. He's 3, 4, 5 yards deep, which shows the explosion he has, the disruptive ability he has. And then the Browns plan to take the handcuffs off and say, just go attack. So they expect those numbers, and he put up good numbers at Michigan, but not eye-popping numbers. They expect that to really change in Jim Schwartz's system. And, and then the other thing Césaire said was, you talk to a guy pre-draft and you get a sense for him, but you don't really know him till you're with him, around him every day. And he said Mason Graham is first in, last out, always practicing hard, and he's the guy they're looking for.
So the other thing defensively that jumps out about a year ago, one of the biggest disappointments, they couldn't turn the ball over. Denzel Ward talked about that. You kind of wrote an article with that. Take us through Ward and how important that is going to be this year.
You can't overstate it. You just can't, David. I mean, if you're looking for ways that they can flip things around, I would say the quickest is change that turnover margin. And they had 4 interceptions as a team last year. It was last in the league, and it's almost unfathomable. The number of passes teams throw in this league over 17 games to get 4 interceptions, it's a head scratcher, and it's hard to overcome that, especially when your quarterbacks, they're turning over way more than that. So as a defense, they need to be so much better in that takeaway area. And I would say it starts with the 2 main guys, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. Myles Garrett needs to force more fumbles, strip sacks, batted passes to turn into interceptions. And then Denzel Ward needs to turn some of those league-high 19 pass breakups into interceptions. And he had 2 last year, but he had the chance for so many more. And we saw it even in the OTAs and minicamp. He plays such good coverage, and he's always around the ball if their quarterbacks are brave enough to throw in his direction. And he made a bunch of breakups in this offseason, but I didn't see him come away with any interceptions. That needs to change. He knows it. He's focused on it. Jim Schwartz is, all over him about it. He's spending time on the jugs. They're doing all these drills, but it needs to show up on Sundays. They just need to take the ball away, and it starts with Garrett and Ward.
So training camp gets underway about 5 weeks. What are you paying attention to early in camp?
Yeah, I mean, it's quarterbacks, right? And it's the rotation of the quarterbacks. Because as much as Kevin Stefanski told us not to pay attention to that, we did anyway. But even if you want to believe him, that changes in training camp. Maybe it's not day one that it changes, but I think it kind of does. If Joe Flacco's getting the majority of the number one reps, I think that means a lot. Will Shadur Sanders have passed Dylan Gabriel? I doubt it, but that's something to pay attention to. So it's the quarterbacks, how that competition is shaking out. I want to see DeJuan Jones against Myles Garrett. It's just a tough ask for DeJuan Jones. But if he can survive, then God bless him, and I think it really helps him when you get to week one. And then what do they do at receiver? Dave, does Cedric Tillman stay healthy? Does Deontay Johnson, does he look motivated? Or do they add somebody else to that room?
The other thing that I'm curious about is relative to DeJuan Jones. If they figure out DeJuan Jones is a left tackle and a really good left tackle, that's a huge piece. Other than quarterback, that might be the next most important piece, is finding the guy that's protecting your quarterback's blind side for the next 5 years.
I think that's a great point. I really do. When you look at kind of the long-term, I think I wrote something about that the other day, Dave, and I was struggling with, I don't know if it's a to-do list, but it's like projects. So what do we need to find out over the next 12 months or 6 months? And that's really high on their list. It's quarterback, and then it's left tackle. And if they have that guy, all of a sudden, that second first-round pick doesn't look as important, it's still important, but, if you had it penciled in for left tackle, now you can shift it to receiver or pick whatever other premium position, and the same would go if you found your quarterback. If you found your quarterback of the future, and let's say they found the quarterback of the future and found your left tackle of the future, all of a sudden those 2 first-round picks, they become gold. You can either trade them for a king's ransom or address 2 other big-time positions. So I couldn't agree more with you.
Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, David.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. Brownzone.com on the internet. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram. Always great Browns coverage. We continue talking Browns. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Former front office type Louis Riddick on the challenges Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski faces sorting out the quarterback position.
It really does all depend on how Kevin is able to, as it relates to Shedeur, work him in enough. Well, one, Shedeur has to earn the right for Kevin and the staff to have discussions about, hey, we got to get him more reps with the 1s and 2s. We got to get him more reps with the 1s and 2s when we're going team period, not just walk through or not just 7-on-7 team situations where we move the football in the preseason game. We got to get him more reps. I think he has to earn that. Kevin has to figure out a way to do that. So then you can reasonably assess what you have in him compared to Dylan Gabriel, compared to Kenny, compared to Joe Flacco. If you don't, then, the conversation surrounding him is going to continue to be what it's been, which is, but for some people, he was overhyped all along. He's not that great of an athlete, doesn't have a big enough arm. There's a reason why he was a 5th-round pick, blah, 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 which I don't believe.
Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, you've been at all of the available media openings for minicamp and OTAs and all those things. Have you seen, the progression in Shadur Sanders that you would want to?
Yeah, I mean, from the rookie minicamp, till the final veteran minicamp, I thought he had progressed pretty well. I thought Dylan Gabriel had too. I think they're making good strides, and I think that, I don't know if they're in the conversation to be the starting quarterback on opening day. I kind of disagree a little bit with Louis Riddick, is that they don't have to be ready for opening day. I think that it'll be interesting when training camp opens in about 5 weeks. Will the pecking order be the same, or will they have jumbled it up? Because, as I wrote in an article this morning about, what the quarterback situation is and what I think it might end up being, there's not a lot of time once they get there. Let's say last year they started July 25th. Let's say it's somewhere around there. The first preseason game is August 8th, and they're going to Carolina to practice against the Panthers before that. So there's really not much time before it gets real. And when it's getting real, you have to get the guys ready that you're planning on playing. So I think Sanders is coming along fine, so is Gabriel. And we'll just see, what the coaches think. I think the Browns have to make a decision how they're going to approach this season early.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say it's up to Shedeur Sanders to force Kevin Stefanski to play him with the ones. He's got to go out and play well enough that Kevin Stefanski says, we got to see what this guy does. I know you also wrote, take us through that early prediction on how the Browns handle the quarterback position and who will be their starter. I know you've written that.
Well, it's what I was just kind of alluding to. When you look at those first 6 games, the teams all have winning records. In fact, they're overwhelmingly winning records from last year. I know last year is last year, but the records are 71 and 31, just around 700% winning percentage. The worst team record-wise from last year they play in those first 6 games are the Bengals, who were 9 and 8. We all know they're probably better than that. Then you go on the road, you play the Ravens, and then you have that gauntlet of the NFC North. Packers, Lions, Vikings, and then the Steelers. All of them had 10 or more wins last year. And so the Browns, I think, fundamentally have to make a decision. They're going to tell you they are playing to win. And with Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Joel Bitonio, David Njoku, players in their prime, you really have to take that approach. And so in my opinion, if you're really playing to win to start the season, I think you got to go with Joe Flacco. That's who I feel right now will open the season, because I think he gives you the best chance. He's clearly was the best quarterback as far as running the offense, having done that before in the mini camps, even though he didn't get a lot of opportunities because they didn't feel like he needed it. That's just my opinion. I don't know how much it'll change when training camp opens and the regular season begins. But if they really think Kenny Pickett gives them the best chance to win over Flacco, then he will start. But I do not think either Sanders or Gabriel will start immediately. It makes sense to me to start Flacco, and then if things go well, you continue with him. If things go south, you come out of those first 6 games 2-4, 1-5, then you start using the rest of the season to play Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Because if you make the commitment that Kenny Pickett's your quarterback and he plays well, and that would be great for the Browns, you would have a very similar situation to what the Vikings had with Sam Darnold. Pickett would want big money, and he would probably leave as a free agent. The difference is you don't have a number 1 pick like J.J. McCarthy sitting there. And so you wouldn't know what you had with the young guys, the 2 rookies, I mean, and you have 2 first-round picks next year. So that's where I just think, even though Pickett was the first guy they went after, I think things changed when you drafted 2 rookies, because they're going to be on the team. And you have them on those rookie contracts. So what makes the most sense to me is Flacco and the 2 rookies. But if they can't trade Pickett and they like him, they could keep all 4 of them, as I wrote in the story, because now with the expanded 16 practice squad, in effect, the Browns have been doing that. They almost use it like the AAA and on game day bring up an extra tight end, special teams guys, defensive backs. You can stash guys on practice squad. You can't really stash quarterbacks because if you waive Gabriel or even Pickett or Sanders, somebody's going to claim them and you're going to get nothing for it. So that's why I think that they have to decide here, are they going for it? And if they're going for it this year, then I think Joe Flacco gives you the best bet. Otherwise, there's no reason to play him because he's 40 years old. He's not the future. But you can sort it out, I think, from there. I could be totally wrong, and I might be, but that's logically how I approach looking at this.
No, I get where you're going, and I can't argue with that. Let's talk about the wide receiving corps. It's thin. Who do you think the key to that group is?
Well, the wild card, I don't know if it's a key, is Deontay Johnson. I mean, a former Pro Bowler who hasn't done it in 3 years. But with this, because they did not draft a wide receiver at all, even high or at all, they didn't sign a free agent until they signed Johnson after the draft. They let Elijah Moore leave, so you're kind of treading water at best there. You traded Amari Cooper last year. So at this time last year, you had Cooper, Judy, and Moore as your top three, hoping that Judy would have a breakout year, and he did. So they moved on from Cooper. They moved on from Moore. But right now, you don't have a clear-cut number two. I know they want it to be Cedric Tillman. I'm high on him. He had that 3-game stretch last year, but he's finished both of his first 2 years on injury reserve with concussions. Very scary situation. And you have a lot of unproven draft picks. I mean, guys Andrew Berry obviously is high on. David Bill coming off a hip surgery. Jamari Thrash, 5th-round pick. Michael Woods, a former 7th-round pick. Cedric Tillman, 3rd-round pick. So you're counting on all those draft picks, one of them or two of them to step up. So I think Deontay Johnson, could really be a great find, but you got him on very low risk. 1 year, $1.2 million, minimal contract. You can walk away at any time. It's probably his last opportunity, I would think, in the NFL after 3 teams last year. So I don't know what kind of Deontay Johnson you're going to get. I still contend you should look around when training camp and when cuts are coming, or even as Barry's been good in making trades. Identify players on teams that might get cut, teams with a surplus of wide receivers like the Packers or other teams out there, because I do not think you're settled at wide receiver, especially if Jerry Jeudy were to go down. I mean, do you feel good about any of them guys being your top receiver? I don't think so.
No. Here's another thing for you, though. And the injury to Jeudy, if Jeudy gets banged up, that's a great question. We've heard they're going to use Dylan Sampson in the slot. We heard that from Deuce Staley. Harold Fannin has the ability to split out. Does that lessen the need for that third wide receiver? I know you still need one, but does that minimize the urgency, do you think, at all?
It could. I like Fannin a lot. He catches everything, at least what I saw in the offseason program, but he is a rookie, and it seems for whatever reason, a lot of times rookies just don't make a big impact right away. But I think like Njoku could split out wide. I think you could put Fannin out wide as well as Sampson. And if you feel good enough about the running back or the rookies that you could count on them to come through, yes, I do think. I do think you're going to see more tight ends. I don't know if Fannin can block. I don't think he was picked to be a blocker. Just like Njoku, he really wasn't a blocker when he got here. He's more of a receiver. So you do make a good point. I do think that's an option. I've talked about that you could almost count Fannin as a wide receiver because I don't know how much he's going to be asked to block, and you can split him out and use him in that role. But until somebody emerges, I think you just have a lot of questions there.
Fred Greetham and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about upcoming training camp. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, other than quarterback, what are some of the areas that the Browns need to improve on if they're going to improve from 3 wins a season ago?
Yeah, I talked about it on the offense. You know, I felt like wide receiver was a big need, and they didn't really address it, just counting on young guys to step up, at least to this point. But I think the defense has to get back to what they were in 2023 when they were number 1 statistically. I think the biggest thing is getting off the field on 3rd down and the takeaways. I mean, that year they had 28 takeaways. Last year they had 12 takeaways. That's 16 times they got off the field more in 2023, which takes points off the board for the opponent. And so I just really think if the defense, you know, and they addressed heavily with their first 2 picks with Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger, who I expect both those guys to start, Malik Collins, who I think will be a big factor on the inside as well. I really think that the defense will go a long way. We talked about it last year, is that we thought we had a healthy Deshaun Watson, and if he just played adequate, average, a little above average, the team could make the playoffs. He obviously played horrible. The defense dropped back as well. So I think the defense has to get back for sure into the top 10. And then obviously the offense has to do better in 15 points. But I think that the defensive line all the way around has to put more pressure. That will help, you know, in getting off the field, help the cornerbacks, help the safeties. They have to get more takeaways, and that starts all over the place, but especially at safety. They brought in Juan Thornhill to be a ball hawk. He had no interceptions in his 2 seasons with the Browns. So they're counting on Ronnie Hickman to pick up the slack and make some plays. The corners got to play better. So all the way around for the defense to get back to top 10, top 5, they're going to have to play better all the way around. It starts with stopping the run and getting pressure consistently on the quarterback. And so if your defense can hold your opponent 17, 18 points instead of 21 or higher, the offense then can turn its attention to trying to control the clock with a running game, going back to the wide zone scheme with linemen that were brought in to play in that scheme. And then you draft 2 young running backs in Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins to go with Jerome Ford to try to control the clock, you know, with a good ground game, get back to their roots there. So that's I think what they're going to try to do, but I do think the defense has to step it up to take some of the pressure off the offense until they get things going.
So training camp starts in about 5 weeks. What do you think will this be different than the training camps past couple of years, and how do you think it will be different?
Well, I just got a note here while we're talking. I think the rookies report July 18th and the veterans the 22nd. So, yeah, I think that I saw a little bit more up tempo in the offseason program. I think Kevin Stefanski, said that when they addressed the whole, although he hasn't spoken particulars, I think they're going to try to address the toughness factor. Had a lot of injuries last season, and it wasn't really because of training camp, because they really tried to get to the regular season healthy. They didn't play many starters in the preseason at all. I think we might see some more, at least the 3 quarterbacks, maybe not Joe Flacco, but see them in the and first team players, So all the way around, I think they're trying to be a little more physical and tough. And I think that was obvious last year. They weren't. And so we'll see what happens, but I expect practice to be a little more intense, a little more purposeful, especially when you're playing or practicing against the Panthers and you're practicing twice against the Eagles before those first 2 preseason games. I think those will be the highlight of training camp, and they will carry more weight than actually those first 2 preseason games, in my opinion, because coaches can control what they really have questions and what they want to see. And no matter what you say, with those, when you get 2 different teams, there's a lot of tempers in the heat that flare, and they get pretty intense. So that's what I expect. I think it's going to ramp up the intensity level, in training camp all the way around.
All right, before I let you go, other than quarterback, what position battles are you paying attention to?
Well, you talked about wide receiver. I think you have several positions there unsettled. I think most of the front line are settled. They want Ronnie Hickman to be the free safety opposite Grant Delpit. They did bring in 2 veterans, KZ and Jenkins, to support and to battle in case he can't handle it. So at safety, that will be. I think Fannon's going to be the backup tight end behind Njoku. I think Judkin's going to be the starting running back unless, he can't hold off Ford or Sampson. I don't know about positions. I think DeJuan Jones at left tackle, if he's going to be able to win the job, they want him to win the job and hold it off over 12-year veteran Cornelius Lucas. They brought him in to be the swing guy and to be the starter if Jones isn't ready to go. But by all indications, Jones is going to have every opportunity. So I think those are the big battles. Left tackle, safety, linebacker. I think Schlesinger, is favored to be the starter, over to go with Hicks back there. And then maybe, I don't know how you can't assume Mason Graham's going to start at defensive tackle. So all the way around, there'll be some battles, but I think there's guys that already have, the inside track. It's going to be the quarterback. It's going to be the story, obviously, all training camp every day.
Fred Greetham, Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Dave.
Fred,
great day.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always good Browns coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.